unless you think he's going to get absolutely washed in a non-competitive way against Charles Oliveira, I don't necessarily see so much downside to that matchup. To me, it's like, gosh, Paddy Pimblett, Charles Oliveira has become my dream fight right next to Khamzat Chimaev and Dricus du Plessis. So unless you think he's going to get absolutely washed, I don't know that a loss to Charles is necessarily, fraught with downside. But yes, you're right. You could have him lay back in the cut and give him a title fight right now, especially because you have a lightweight champion that, because Arman Tsarukyan kind of screwed himself, doesn't have an obvious next in line.
All right, Jon Anik is here, ladies and gentlemen, the man who was on the call for a memorable storyline-filled UFC 314 card in Miami just a few days ago. A lot to digest from UFC 314. Jon Anik, good to see you, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's great to see you. And I think with you, I probably trotted out the line about there being 15 Super Bowls a year many times, right? The one the NFL does and then the 14 that we do. Certainly felt like a Super Bowl in Miami.
Yeah, this is a good one. There was nothing real negative to say about it. This is one that we were hyping up for months and was circled on the calendar as this card just continued to build. And in the aftermath, a lot happened at UFC 314. And depending on who you ask, and I'm sure you've seen this as well, you're going to get a few different answers to this question I'm about to ask you, because I've gotten a mixed bag from folks since the card. But when you look back on UFC 314, when we bring this one up in December, when we're talking about award season, reflecting on the year that was, when someone says, Jon, what about UFC 314? What's the first thing you think will come to your mind?
Oh, Paddy the Baddy, right? I mean, come on, right? Now, I build this promotionally or otherwise as the biggest night in the UFC's featherweight division since Jose Aldo and Conor McGregor. I think it even exceeded my expectations in terms of everything that happened, and that's really not hyperbole. So all of that being said, and I have argued it's Alexander Volkanovski's signature win, his career best performance. This night for me was about Paddy Pimblett asserting himself as an elite lightweight, and say what you want about Michael Chandler, but he was very close to beating Charles Oliveira. He had moments against both Justin Gaethje and Dustin Poirier, and Paddy Pimblett came in there and let everybody know. So Paddy Pimblett for me will be my long-standing takeaway from UFC 314.
Same with me, because I've gotten some Volkanovski responses, and we're going to touch on that in a second. A whole bunch of Paddy, several John Silva responses, and we're going to touch on all of those in a matter of moments. But I do want to start with Alexander Volkanovski because history was against him, Jon. Statistics were against him. And as he's done so many times, he took those trends and he set them on fire. Goes out there, beats Diego Lopez. I scored at 49-46. I thought he looked great, stuck to a solid game plan, loved the jab all night. He was putting Lopez on the back foot, slowed a very game Diego Lopez down for the most part. And now the man is a two-time champion. Volk just seems at this point, Jon, like one of those guys. And I tell fans this all the time, appreciate this man's work now because you are going to miss it when he's gone. And I don't think he's going to be around too much longer.
Well, I think the good news is that everybody does appreciate him. And I think he is as beloved in the United States of America as any international fighter. I mean, certainly we talk about Alex Poatan Pereira globally, wherever that guy goes, the crowds follow. But Volk's connection with American fight fans is absolutely undeniable. When Diego Lopez and Yair Rodriguez were getting into their little skirmish at the press conference, you may have seen Volk and I having a conversation as we were walking off the stage. And I said, man, the connectivity between you and this crowd and American crowds is crazy. And you've done it all your way. Frank Sinatra, just being yourself. I said to Joe Rogan before UFC 314 that I don't know in totality that I've had enough appreciation for the Volkanovski era. And this performance, I think, was the win that sort of allowed me to, like a flower, open up my appreciation for everything that Alexander Volkanovski has done in sort of cementing himself as the greatest featherweight of all time. And I think Diego Lopez is going to be a really hard man to beat moving forward. I think he got the best version of Volk, and it wasn't nearly enough from Diego, obviously.
Yeah, Volk, I mean, when you run down, at least in my eyes, the 10 greatest UFC title defenses of all time, I think Volk has 2 or 3 of them right now. I think the third Max Holloway fight was about as perfect of a performance as you will get.
Yes.
I thought his Korean Zombie win was a perfect game as well. He just beat the tar out of that man. It was just so impressive to watch. And like each performance was so good. And this featherweight GOAT debate, Jon, I know you hear about this all the time. First of all, let me just say I love the video package of going through the all-time greats in the division that aired during the prelims, and I thought you were the perfect voice for it, going from Aldo to Holloway to Volk, even sprinkling Taporia in there, trying to evoke all the MMA math. And all things considered, I think this has now become the toughest divisional GOAT debate in UFC history because Aldo has the title defenses. I think WEC has to be included in this conversation. And Volk is just running amok in this discussion with just the one featherweight loss, two-time champ, has 3 wins over Holloway, has the win over Aldo. And for a while, John, I admit I was the staunch Jose Aldo can't be overtaken guy. I was also the Drew Bledsoe can't be benched for the Super Bowl guy. Yeah. So I am staunch in when it comes to nostalgia and all that. My stubborn nature wouldn't even let me have the conversation. But now, John, I am willing to have this conversation. After this victory, I am willing to have it. I'm willing to listen to it. How often do you hear about this? Because I know you say he's the consensus greatest featherweight and all these different things. I know I have colleagues who give you a little crap for that, but what is this debate like right now, at least in your eyes? And what are you hearing from the fans after UFC 314?
Yeah, sometimes I'll shout out the word consensus and people are like, no, it's not the consensus. And, I guess sometimes I'm the man with the microphone with the opinion, but I would almost want to throw it back on you, right? Because this is a conversation as much as it's an interview. What does Alexandre Pantoja need to do exactly in the modern era to open the conversation with Demetrius Johnson as the greatest flyweight of all time? I don't know the answer to that question. What does Dricus du Plessis have to do to get mentioned with Anderson Silva? People scoffed when I mentioned Israel Adesanya with Anderson Silva, and perhaps I was a little bit premature, but I value this era greatly. And what do you say of the Max Holloway era that was just so special? So you're right when it comes to featherweight. I almost want to open it up and throw it back to you on all the divisions because I got into it with Firas Zahabi when it comes to the bantamweight because he said, give Dominic Cruz his due as the greatest 135-pound fighter of all time. And I said, go to Wikipedia and pull up Merab Dvalishvili's body of work and don't at me, So I don't, and Dom's my best friend. So I don't know. I mean, Jose Aldo is always going to be put on a pedestal, as will Max Holloway. But for me, right, to beat Diego Lopez and add this win to everything that he's done, for me, it's Volk, man.
I get it. I don't know. It's just so weird to me. Like, I think this is an actual conversation now because I remember when Usman was on his run, it was like, how many wins is he away from being the greatest welterweight of all time in terms of title defenses? I'm like, 5. He's just got to keep rattling them off. I feel like this is almost like the Jordan LeBron debate in a lot of respects, where it's like, well, Jordan's got the rings. And I think a lot of people have sort of settled on, well, Aldo's got the title defenses and Volk's right there. And some people are even closing the gap here and saying, hey, if he goes and hands Movsar Evloev his first loss, now we have closed the gap almost where they're nose to nose, or Volk has superseded him right now. It's just really tough to be put in these positions. And bantamweight is a super tough one because you can make a clear case it's Merab based on his resume. But again, one more title defense. Like, bantamweight is such a weird division because there hasn't been a long stringing run of title defenses that we can measure up to. So it's almost like process of elimination. You give it to Dom, but if Merab goes out there and beats O'Malley again, like, you could very easily put him in as number 1,
How do you quantify long winning streaks like those belonging to newly minted champions Belal Muhammad and Merab Dvalishvili? I know Merab has already defended the title, right? But Belal Muhammad is trying to go down as the greatest welterweight of all time. Now, I don't know if Leon Edwards was trying to become the greatest welterweight of all time. I know he was trying to become the undisputed UFC welterweight champion. Twice he successfully defended the title. But Belal Muhammad wants to be one of the greatest of all time, right? And I think this winning streak sort of speaks to that. Now, nobody mentions Belal when it comes to George St. Pierre and Kamaru Usman, the greatest welterweights of all time. But you'll see on his T-shirts at UFC 315, GOAT is the goal, whether people laugh in his face or not. So it's a great time to be an MMA fan, as trite as that may sound, because all these conversations are wide open. And sometimes on a long-form medium like a podcast, I find myself going Mount Rushmore or GOAT when I don't even fucking mean to and don't even want to have the conversation. But these guys are so great, it almost sort of lends itself to the convo.
The second biggest winner in this division on Saturday, and as great as John Silva was, it was a guy who didn't even fight on Saturday, in my opinion. I mentioned him earlier. I think it was Movsar Evloev. I think Saturday could have gone very, very badly for him. especially with after what happened at the press conference. If Diego Lopez won the belt and Yair Rodriguez had knocked out Pitbull or something, there is no doubt in my mind UFC 320 would have been headlined by Diego Lopez versus Yair Rodriguez in Guadalajara for the featherweight belt. But everything sort of fell into place beautifully for Movzar, and I think he is unfairly painted with the quote unquote boring brush. And I think he is the guy right now. And I honestly thought he was the guy beforehand who has earned his day in court to fight for the UFC featherweight title. It's got to be Movzar next, right, John?
There's so much that goes into matchmaking, right? Yair Rodriguez beats Patricio Pitbull and looks over to Hunter Campbell and says, this man promised me a title fight if I welcomed Pitbull into the UFC and came in and dominatedly beat him. And he did, now he didn't finish the guy. But yeah, I mean, I would have thought Yair would have the inside track if Diego Lopez won. Thankfully, with Merab and Bilal and Volk, you have these champions who want to turn it around every 3 or 4 months and want to reside in a straight meritocracy and fight the most deserving guy. You got to love it as an avid MMA fan that the first name on the tip of the tongue for Volk is Movsar Evloev. He wants to beat the guy that's 9-0 in the octagon. And I do think Diego Lopez actually would have been of a healthy appetite to have a rematch with Movsar Evloev, even though promotionally, to your point, I think they would have had no choice but to go in that direction. I still think they have to make the Diego Lopez-Yair Rodriguez fight as the co-main event, 5 rounds, Guadalajara anyway. But yeah, I mean, when I was talking to Rogan in the locker room after the fact, I was like, dude, how many guys is John Silva going to be the betting underdog against? And what are you doing with that guy? And he's like, you could have him fight for the title. And I was like, you're goddamn right he can. So there's a lot of things that go into it. I don't have to tell you that. But let us all hope for maybe we should just take a moment and pray for Movsar Evloev to get his championship opportunity.
Speaking of Rogan, after Volk's win, the camera pans to the three of you guys. We're getting ready to start our post-fight show. So this is the literal last thing I heard before we went live. You three were recapping the fight. And you were talking about the scorecards, and I don't know verbatim what you guys said. And then Joe Rogan said something to the effect of Sean Shelby is out of his mind or he's insane or something like that.
Sean Shelby needs to get drug tested, I think was what he said.
Yes. Did he score the fight for Diego? What happened there?
All right. So I trotted out there on the broadcast at the end, close to the end of the third round. I said, Diego Lopez might want to do something here. He's in danger of being down 3-0. Now, I don't know that Sean Shelby's looking at me sideways after I say that. I'm doing the broadcast. But then DC audibly, if memory serves, brought it to my attention. So then I look down and Maynard and Shelby are looking at me like I should lose my job. And not that I question myself. I know what I see. And then I'm thankful to see Sean Sheehan's score populate as a 30-27, and I since have done my homework about round 4. And maybe I was in some part wrong to criticize Sal D'Amato, even though sometimes I don't know what I'm watching relative to what I have learned. But yeah, I mean, I think at that point in time, Shelby wrongfully, I can say that respectfully, thought Diego Lopez might have been up 2-1. I think there's an argument for 50-45 Volkanovski based upon my rewatch and my sort of research in a retroactive way into the scoring. Here's the thing, if I could just say this in 20 seconds. The biggest punch of the fight was landed in round 4. And I would say respectfully, shame on Diego Lopez for not following up. But Volk did land twice as many strikes in round 4. And I guess now I can understand why Sal would have scored that round for him. But I guess the way I'm saying, if you land the biggest strike of the fight and you come somewhat close to maybe putting the guy away, is that not your round? But yeah, I mean, I gave 1, 2, 3, and 5 to Volk.
Yeah, it was. I think 50-45 is a fine score too. My colleague Jed Mishu, while we were doing the watch party, scored it exactly that 50-45 for Volk. So
yeah.
Let's talk about Paddy Pimblett. What a performance. This guy was the star of the show all week long. Everybody was into it. I feel like everybody has sort of turned the corner on Paddy. I feel like he's not just saying stuff. I feel like he truly believes the things he is saying. He has become a physical force in there. He just looks gigantic. He looks in tremendous physical condition, and he's just hossing guys around there and beating the soul out of them. Say what you will, like you said, about Michael Chandler. No one has beat the hell out of Michael Chandler like Paddy Pimblett did on Saturday. That was incredibly impressive. But still, I don't feel he's getting the credit he deserves for this victory, John. Have you seen this?
Well, I think part of it is because people have selective memory when it comes to Michael Chandler's body of work and the way stylistically he has fought the elite guys, which is the same way he has fought everybody else. But Michael Chandler was so close to beating one of those elite guys, and then the whole narrative on Chandler's career changes. I draw parallels to Ian Machado Gary when it comes to Paddy Pimblett because for whatever reason, people focus on things other than the martial arts athlete when it comes to these two guys. And for me, not because I'm a promoter, but I'm trying to see who I think can be the world champion, right? Like when I save fighter cards, right? And I do save some of these purposefully, but the reason why I have all of Ilya Topodia's fighter cards is because I thought he could be something. I have long believed in Paddy Pimblett, and I think people so leaned into the hair or the Jared Gordon result or that wayward performance or the orating skills or pick something else to focus on. But for me, it's like I'm focused on the fighter meetings. I'm focused on the guy that could have come to the UFC at 21 but came when he was a proper athlete, and the kid who can't wait to use 12 to 6 elbows now that they're legal, the mean streak, the violent nature of his game, the fact that unlike some people, kids have taken his discipline and motivational levels to a different place, right? Like Sean O'Malley, when he had a kid, it's like, does the kid bring any different motivation? He's like, no, I'm doing this for myself, and I respect that too. But yeah, Paddy Pimblett's a real problem. And when I sat down with him before the Chandler fight, it's not like he's talking about Islam Makhachev, which he could be, right? Like Islam doesn't have an obvious opponent right now. Heaven forbid Paddy Pimblett lay out a case. He's asking to fight Charles fucking Oliveira because he believes in himself. What else can you say?
I love that fight. If I'm the UFC right now, if I'm in this meeting on Tuesday and we're talking about what Paddy's does next, and I've been saying this even in the build of the fight, I would give him a title fight next. I wouldn't say jump the line. I wouldn't say he's the next opponent for Islam or whoever the champion is. Obviously, we got to wait till May 10th to see how all that plays out. Maybe Islam moves to 170 if the result favors him in some direction. We don't know what's going on with Ilya Topuria. But Paddy's next, man. Like, just do it now. Just freaking do it now. Like, you're right there. You could do it and no one would complain about it.
So fighters sometimes get a title fight off of a loss. Certainly champions like the last Stylebender, right? And others will get a title fight off a loss. I thought Ian Machado Gary really could have and maybe should have gotten a title fight in Montreal against Bilal Muhammad. The reason Shavkat can't go is because he had to go 25 hard against Ian Machado Gary and he can't make the walk, right? Like, why is Ian not, getting that opportunity? So there's a lot of different things, that go into it. And I bring it up in the context of Paddy Pimblett because unless you think he's going to get absolutely washed in a non-competitive way against Charles Oliveira, I don't necessarily see so much downside to that matchup. To me, it's like, gosh, Paddy Pimblett, Charles Oliveira has become my dream fight right next to Khamzat Chimaev and Dricus du Plessis. So unless you think he's going to get absolutely washed, I don't know that a loss to Charles is necessarily, fraught with downside. But yes, you're right. You could have him lay back in the cut and give him a title fight right now, especially because you have a lightweight champion that, because Arman Sarukyan kind of screwed himself, doesn't have an obvious next in line.
Yeah. I love all these options for Pat. If they just go right to Ilya, cool. If they go to Arman, cool. If they go to Oliveira, awesome. Like I'm down for everything right now. I'm completely sold on Paddy now. Like I really am. And people think I'm too high on him at this point. So I don't know what people want from me. You're either too negative or you're too positive. There is no middle ground with these fans, Jon Anik. It is what it is. But as far as Michael Chandler goes, where does he go from here? Because again, he defines his success not by wins and losses, but by the attention he provides to fights, about building fights, and about the way he competes in there. And this, unlike a lot of his other fights, not all that competitive. He did win the first round, but then it was the Paddy show the rest of the way. Where does he go from here? Do we keep putting him in this, hey, let's build other guys maybe against you, or are we doing veteran fights now with Michael Chandler?
Well, I think he has to ask himself if he's overtraining a little bit. I think that question needs to be asked. And he started this training camp injured. He was drinking a margarita 10 weeks out. Hunter Campbell called him. He accepted. He started his training camp 8 weeks out, and he was injured, and his body responded. But, you can only ask so much of yourself in this sport. And I think anyone who has fought, like Dominic Cruz and others, 3 title fights, for example, inside a calendar year, you pay the price for it. So I think at times he is biting off more than he can chew. Not that he underestimated Paddy Pimblett, but he took 2 years off, and then he wanted to make this quick turn after the most physically grueling fight of his career, the rematch with Charles Oliveira. So Bank of America account has six figures, as they say, but 2-5 in the UFC is not what he's looking for. There's a lot of red on the Wikipedia page, and I don't think that sits well with him. And there aren't a lot of easy outs in the lightweight division. So I think he'll respond in kind. Sometimes the sport forcibly will make you take 6 or 9 months off. I don't even know if Volk wanted to take the time off, and look what happened. So I know for Chandler, he might be reluctant to do that because Conor McGregor kind of played with some of his prime years, but I think he's got to sit tight till December and then go try to beat somebody like Drew Dober, which will be no easy task.
Yeah, that's a good fight. King Green is another name I thought of. I don't mind that. Chandler versus Chase Hooper could be interesting if we're going to play that game.
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of ways to go with this. Jon Silva versus Bryce Mitchell seemed to steal the show, John. I mean, what was that like being in Miami? Just seeing the vibes when it came to those two guys, being around Jon Silva, being around Bryce Mitchell. What did you see from both guys on fight week, fighter meeting, etc.?
Well, you want to talk about a matchmaker meeting, right? And they talk about Volk's next opponent. I mean, you don't think someone's like, what are we doing with Jon Silva? And they all just start laughing, I don't even know where to begin. He's showboating and looking off to the side as he's systematically taking out one of the top 12 fighters in his division and one of the best grapplers in the division. And every bit of media I've done since UFC 314, I've had no choice but to acknowledge Bryce Mitchell, because is this not what you're looking for out of your elite athletes? To be willing to get knocked out, to be willing to get choked unconscious? Bryce Mitchell is a credentialed Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and he is fearless when it comes to getting choked unconscious on national television. So I think Bryce Mitchell deserves a lot of credit. He could not have fought any harder, and he knew acutely the challenge that was in front of him in terms of Jon Silva's timing and his accuracy and everything that he brings to the table. My goodness, man. He's the ultimate showman. And unlike some of his fellow fighting nerds, Jon Silva doesn't speak English. Imagine if he could speak English like Carlos Prates and Caio Borralho. I don't even know what to say, man, but I think Jon Silva would be favored against most featherweights in the world. He certainly lights up a room. He's a little bit out there. Sometimes as the press conference moderator, I don't know what exactly he is doing, but yeah, the fans certainly have responded, and he's resonating with every last one of them. And yeah, we'll see how far I can take it, but he's going to beat a lot of people.
Obviously, Bryce is under fire a lot of this camp, and from people I talked to, some think it was fair, some think maybe not. Maybe people should have dug in a little bit deeper to some of his comments if you listen to the context of them. And people can have their opinions on this, but the way this was promoted was, hey, if you don't like what Bryce Mitchell had to say, you could spend $80 and watch him get his ass kicked. Like, that's what you can do. So my question is, because when people talked about the stakes of this fight, it was whoever loses is going to have a rough few months. Like, if Jon lost, he talked a lot of noise and got beat by Bryce Mitchell. That would have been really bad for him. And Bryce coming in there, no matter what happened, it's not going to be great for him, but a loss is kind of catastrophic for him. Can he bounce back from this? I mean, it's tough, and this is MMA, and winning changes everything, but he's in a weird spot, is he not?
Well, in the eyes of some people, he'll never bounce back. I'm a Jewish man. I've experienced anti-Semitism to whatever degree, not like my grandfather, who changed his last name from Greenberg to Grayson to rent an apartment at one point. But I certainly think that there are some people who are never going to sort of forgive. I'm not some sort of grudge holder. And if I judge Bryce Mitchell in totality, he's been one of the most respectful athletes that I've ever dealt with. And he has treated everybody with buckets of kindness every step of the way. And, I thought he had a sort of big moment at the press conference. I'm a dog lover, but I thought Bryce Mitchell kind of won the press conference, in terms of his coldness and responding to Jon Silva. And I do think that he can, in the court of public opinion, establish some goodwill and earn some trust from people. His comments were ignorant. I think he understands the gravity of them now. But if you're only as good as your last performance, he willingly fought an unranked, dangerous man against whom there was very little upside for Bryce. Willingly signed on the dotted line, went out on his shield, went to sleep, and tapped out. I don't know. I think Bryce Mitchell kind of maximized this showcase in a lot of respects in a fight that the odds makers told you was not very winnable for him. So I think he spun it forward pretty well, all things considered.
Last thing I want to ask you, I know we're running out of time, but another big moment that happened during fight week, and I thought of you immediately. UFC 316 press conferences going on. We have Kayla Harrison and Juliana Pena going back and forth. And we see Amanda Nunes sitting in the crowd, and she's got her child and she's taking it all in. And then Dana White is asked, is Amanda Nunes coming back? Dana looks at her. Amanda nods her head. She smiles. She's coming back, Jon. You said there's a real world where this happens after she retired. If something big comes along, I think she might come back. And it looks like she's coming back, Jon.
Well, the greatest moment of my 13 years on the headset is when she won her last fight and came over and kissed my forehead, right? Walked right past DC and kissed my forehead. Just kidding, champ. So, yeah, but I can't say I'm surprised. I think there are financial considerations to be sure. Nina Nunes is going to come back, I think, as soon as August as well, So I think there are a lot of things that go into this, but that competitive itch can only be scratched in the octagon for Amanda. And for Conor McGregor, with respect to BKFC, and every other competitive setting, the itch that Conor in some part of his brain is trying to scratch can only be scratched in the octagon. So I'm excited for Amanda to be back. I think she'll be obviously of a healthier appetite to face Kayla Harrison, but she's got to get through Juliana Pena. But yeah, the sport is better with Amanda Nunes in it. She's still in her prime. And, we talked earlier about Pantoja and Demetrius Johnson and some of these divisional conversations. In terms of the greatest women's mixed martial arts athlete of all time, Zhang Wei Li is closing on Amanda Nunes, and fast. So Amanda's back. It's exciting.
It is very, very exciting. It's always exciting to catch up with you, and we will hear you back on the headsets. What's the next? Is 315 the next one for you, or are you going to get one of these other roadshow fight night cards?
Montreal. We will be heading up to the Great White North to see if Jack Della Maddalena can upset the apple cart.
All right. Well, we appreciate your time as always, Jon. Thank you very much, and we'll see you May 10th in Montreal, my man.
Thank you, buddy. Great to talk to you.